Masculinity is defined qualities or attributes regarded as characteristic of men or boys, e.g. handsome, muscled and driven. He's a prime example of masculinity. Throughout history, masculinity has been reinforced by representation within the media, reinforcing or dissuading certain ideas. There is an argument that as reality changes, the media attempts to reflect that in their representations, and with the shift in definitions of what it is to be a man or be masculine, representations have changed. Social media is an extension of this, as it is a microcosm of society. Stuart Hall, 1997, asked the question, who has the power in what channels to circulate which meanings to whom? With a short answer to that question being social media. The entire world has the power to circulate any meanings or representations it wants through social media. It has an even greater power to convey information. With its lack of regulation compared to traditional media, the potential for misinformation and damaging representations is far greater.
In the modern day, our views have evolved and the stereotypical views of male behaviours are slowly changing. There is a further freedom of representation online, assisting a move away from more traditional masculinity. As well as being a place to be heard, it provides the comfort of being able to hide physical identity, speak up, and advocate for different things. This creates a safe space to talk, a good example of this being Roman Kemp. Progressive representations allow men to accept and engage their vulnerabilities. Online discussions that encourage these more progressive representations of masculinity often focus on mental health issues and emotional well-being. They provide an inclusive space that considers and respects the diverse experiences of all men that extend beyond traditional representations of masculinity. There is not an expectation of men to conform to a certain ideology. An example of someone who encourages more progressive views is radio host and TV personality Roman Kemp, who after losing his best friend to suicide 3 years ago, has made it his mission to encourage men to have more honest conversations about mental health.
What you said there, like you didn't know that mental health disorders were a thing. That puts you in a higher risk category than it puts me.
He uses podcasts in the main to engage with people and has also made documentaries with the BBC. He has been overcoming his own struggles with depression and talks openly about the antidepressants he was taking. His ability to express these feelings and be open is a subversion of traditional masculinity. He doesn't feel the need to restrict his emotion for fear of being judged. This representation of masculinity is important as it conveys the idea that sensitivity is a trait that can be associated with it. He has used his social media platform to represent his own masculinity in a way that has encouraged others to embrace theirs. He views speaking out as the strongest thing a man can do. This persona is not what he thought he was going to be known for, but feels it's important for him to do so. Another thing you can see from his profile is how he isn't afraid to verbalize this on social media, to lecture viewers on the side effects of not progressively talking about how men feel.
Even if one person that sees this post today calls their friend and they feel better about their day, then I'll feel like I've won.
Also embracing a more emotional and sensitive side to masculinity. Kemp actually started a documentary about 2 months before his producer, Joe, ended his own life. Joe did open up to Kemp about him wanting to end his own life and his reasonings, and as he was doing that, Kemp was actually thinking to himself that he was having those thoughts too. The documentary became a therapy for Kemp as he was exploring the topic of mental health further and speaking to professionals and professors on the topic to get a deeper understanding of what all these thoughts were. There's been an increase in the conversation between men, particularly in relation to mental health and how men feel. This is a much-needed contrast and shift away from the traditional, more stoic representations of masculinity.
There has been a recent increase in popularity of representations of what is being labelled by supporters as traditional, or by most others as toxic masculinity, perpetrated by men such as Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson. Andrew Tate, an American English influencer, started rising to popularity in 2022 over various social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok. His videos on TikTok alone have been watched 11.6 billion times, according to The Guardian. He is one of many self-proclaimed alpha males on the internet, and he uses his platform to advertise, convince, or persuade young, impressionable men or boys on why and how they should become alpha males. He commonly pushes the narrative that his viewers need to escape the Matrix, a reference to a tagline created and made popular by 1999 allegorical film The Matrix, a film about a group of rebels escaping a manufactured world to escape to freedom and no longer be under the ruling of someone else's personal perfection. Tate believes that the modern day movements such as feminism, gender equality, and LGBTQ rights are fundamentally wrong and against his belief system, using this quote to represent his beliefs in a way it was not originally meant to be perceived. Tate can be found on social media constantly heavily promoting a course on how men can be just like him and make money fast if they buy into his online course titled Hustlers University. With 127,000 members now paying £39 a month to join Hustlers University, many of them men and boys, according to The Guardian. His rise to fame was no accident. Tate continuously urges his followers to cut up and repost his content, flooding it across the internet, choosing the most controversial clips in order to achieve maximum views and engagement. This strongly links to Henry Jenkins' ideas about fan cultures. The prosumer role is prevalent, whereby the audiences engage in content and create their own. This continues to form a snowball effect, whereby other men take part in this performative masculinity to try and echo values learnt through influencers like Tate. Tate represents masculinity in a way that promotes ideals of success, strength, and independence. This is indicated through his incessant repetition of materialistic rhetoric, boasting his wealth by bragging about his Lamborghinis and how much money he has in the bank. He encourages the idea that masculinity is defined by monetary gain and success, that men are only masculine if they are earning large amounts of money. This relates to the traditional models of gender dynamics whereby the men are the breadwinners. Tate also views women as an extension of this materialism. He views them as objects to be conquered and to satisfy the needs of the alpha. Furthermore, he pushes his views upon his fans by using this cultural stereotype of men being seen as providers and having to perform within binary gender stereotypes to make men feel like if they aren't conforming to them, they are lesser men or betas. Often masculinity is connected to stereotypes of different gender roles. Males are often considered to be strong, independent, and powerful. As Judith Butler states in her book Gender Trouble, Feminism and the Subversion of Identity, we regularly punish those who fail to do their gender right, because there is neither an essence that gender expresses or externalizes, nor an objective ideal to which gender aspires, and because gender is not a fact, the various acts of gender create the idea of gender. Without those acts, there would be no gender at all. Gender is thus a construction that regularly conceals its genesis. Tate commonly plays upon this cultural belief that without the various stereotypical acts of the male gender, like providing and being emotionless, you are not a man, thus leading to a sense of gender dysphoria in young, impressionable men who want to be seen as more male by the people around them. Tate consistently promotes the idea that men should be emotionless or be consistently resistant to emotion, stating himself in an interview with Piers Morgan that, "I don't believe depression as a clinical disease is real, and overly emotional men are dangerous." Despite how it may be interpreted by open-minded audience members as hollow speeches and empty chest beating, the damage has already been done to a lot of men and boys across the world, and of course to the women and girls with whom they interact. According to an article in The Scotsman, women have reported that men they know who watch this type of online content have become more sexist towards the women in their lives, and some have become more sexually aggressive towards them.
Some studies suggest that self-representation of traditional masculinity is used by young men to avoid cyber-victimization. Cyber-victimization includes harassment, stalking, abuse, assault and hostility in an online space. In a study carried out by Wright and Wax in 2020, they discovered, in particular, boys with stereotypically feminine traits experienced the most victimization by cyber-verbal aggression and cyber-relational aggression. These findings denote that boys who do not conform to traditional masculinity are far more vulnerable to online abuse than those who do. Strength and dominance are often words associated with masculinity, and these characteristics are manifested through aggression on social media. Individuals' orientation as masculine or feminine is dependent on the extent to which they abide by masculine or feminine norms, according to Richardson and Hammock, 2007. Therefore, many young men create a self-representation of masculinity by exhibiting masculine traits such as aggression online, thus avoiding being a victim. Masculinity being represented as these social criteria to which boys must fit into in order to avoid abuse is detrimental. This re-emergence of traditional or toxic masculinity seems to come as a direct rebuttal to the changing landscape of masculinity. There is an opinion held by those such as Tate and Peterson that as a result of more progressive representations of masculinity, men are now seen as weak. They believe there has been a regression when compared to traditional masculinity, and that's why there are so many young men identifying with these ideas. However, an alternative view on this is that there is no clear representation for what progressive masculinity looks like. In a journal by Jenna Colton in 2014, it is claimed that discussions of masculinity seem to bifurcate the masculinities into A, traditional masculinity, as defined in contemporary culture, and B, other forms of masculinity that in some ways deviate from traditional masculinity. Stuart Hall, in 1997, claims that meanings also regulate and organise our conduct and practices. They help to set the rules, norms, and conventions by which social life is ordered and governed. This suggests that without a clear meaning or representations for progressive masculinity, it is hard to abide by. There is not a clear definition of what it should be, so therefore it is hard for younger men to internalise it.
Exposure to certain representations on social media and in real life can contribute to certain types of toxic masculine behaviour becoming normalised, making it more difficult to eradicate. Social media, due to its popularity, can also sustain and help reinforce traditional gender roles and expectations the more we see them online, which may lead to people feeding into these representations, helping to reinforce them. These gender norms help reinforce these old traditional gender roles and power structures that favour male dominance. Evidence of this was reported by Vox in 2023 on Andrew Tate and how he sells men on toxic masculinity, with the rise of the manosphere on social media, with people giving self-improvement advice that for the most part is misogynistic, with Tate giving his opinion and advice on how to handle a woman and how he feels women can't drive, with some men being brainwashed into believing these statements, partially thanks to Tate's wealth and the platform he has. These representations of toxic masculinity can also have a huge impact on not only men's mental health, but women's mental health as well. Men may feel as if they have to conform to these ideals, which can contribute to the development of mental health issues. In a study conducted by Morrison and Gore in 2010, 1,300 people in the United Kingdom between the ages of 16 and 59, people who were heavy internet users reported more symptoms of depression compared to non-heavy users. This portrayal of men being assertive and dominant may lead to women feeling that this behaviour is normal and could lead to an unhealthy power dynamic and unhealthy expectations in the relationship. Phrases in society can also lead to women feeling hurt, with the idea of the term "like a girl" being used to mock people for doing things a certain way, i.e. throwing a ball and crying, with the idea that doing something like this is bad and feminine. This could make women feel second to men, which would be wrong in society. The portrayal of aggressive and dominant male behaviour on social media platforms like TikTok can also contribute to the normalisation of physical and mental abuse. This normalisation may lead to an increase in such behaviour, as individuals may believe it aligns with societal norms. With people like Andrew Tate, as reported by The Guardian in 2022, emphasising that rape victims should bear responsibility for being attacked. His huge social media following reposting his beliefs, leading to people believing these claims. Toxic masculinity can also have an effect on relationships with men, possibly feeling the pressure to assert dominance and women feeling the need to conform, leading to unhealthy relationship dynamics in the household. The portrayal of toxic masculinity on social media can also lead to a breakdown of communication, with men not opening up and women finding the absence of vulnerability difficult. The impact of toxic masculinity could also have an impact on people's own self-identity, giving unrealistic expectations of themselves, which could lead to a huge impact on mental health, with the struggle of meeting these societal expectations, deliberately changing their opinion in order to fit in. People also scour the internet to find opinions they don't agree with, deliberately trolling people on the internet, with their toxic masculinity making them feel as if they need to dominate the interactions they have with others online, with all these being the effects of how toxic masculinity can be represented in the media.
Overall, social media is full of contrast and representations of masculinity these days. It is the job of the audience to negotiate them and decide what meanings they want to infer and apply to their life. There are a clear number of harmful representations of masculinity on social media, and they have become increasingly prevalent recently. However, so have the representations of progressive masculinity. Throughout history, opinions and representations of masculinity have conflicted, and there is no indication that that will change anytime soon. Thank you for watching our video essay. All of our bibliographies have been included in our scripts on Blackboard.